I do write fast, but someone gave me a piece of advice early on as I was just so chasing publications so hard. And my children were little and I was so all encompassed. And she said, don't forget to experience your life as you're seeking to write about other lives. And that has really stuck with me. And then to even another degree that you have to replenish the well. And so by going out and experiencing the world, and yeah, even if it's as simple as taking a walk around the block or going and sitting with your kids at the pool, or you just have to have those brain spaces, and the way that the art of the world that we live in refills us back up.
Hello, and welcome to So I Wrote a Book, Now What? Where writers chat about writing. I have two amazing guests today. Catherine Mann, the author of Lightning and a Mason Jar, and Charming the Cowboy, both came out July 1st, is on today, and she is on Talking Everything Writing with her daughter, Haley Catherine, who is also one of my critique partners. It's very exciting. We get into everything from their writing process and what it's like to share work with your mom and with your daughter, and just everything in between. I'm so excited for you to hear all about it. Let's get into it. Hi, Catherine. Hi, Haley.
Nicole,
Thanks so
thank you
much
for
for
having
being
us.
here. So I'm going to let everybody know so the cat's out of the bag. We have had an amazing half an hour of a podcast already where it was great and we got deep and it wasn't recording. So which was terrible.
The first one was a practice.
It was practice. Practice is always good. Catherine, what made you decide to write a book?
It's more what kept me from writing it. You know, I've always known that I wanted to write, but fear kept me from writing. And my mother was a very talented journalist and poet and just an all-around brilliant wordsmith. And I knew that I couldn't write like she did. Yeah, later, I realized that's about voice. My voice is different than her voice. But then I just, in that sense of denial, I can't do it. And then finally one day I just thought I have to, or I'm going to explode. All of these characters in my head, they have to come out. And so I sat down and I wrote 100,000 word book in 2 months that never saw the light of day, never got published, never will. But then I was hooked, and I knew that there were more stories. I just needed to learn the craft that goes around the voice. And here I am.
Couple years later.
Yeah,
Just a couple.
Couple. That's a lot, though, 100,000 words in 2 months. How did you do that?
Every time the kids went to sleep, I wrote. And to be fair, their father was in the military, and so he was gone a good bit. And
Yeah.
I was looking for things to fill time. And I had read and read and read, and I've always been an avid reader from a very, very young age, and have loved romance. I love mysteries. I love suspense. I love anything fiction. I don't tend to read nonfiction, love fiction novels. And so I just wrote and wrote and wrote. I didn't say the words were great, but I got them on paper then. And then went back and realized that, yes, I needed to learn the craft of it. And went to my local bookstore, sat on the floor, pulled down every how to write book that I could find, thumbed through them, found other books that could teach me what I really needed to learn, and then found some writers groups to join. And actually one that was close to me, who the president of the group, who was also on some national boards of other writing groups, lived very close to me, just a few blocks away. And she took me under her wing and really helped mentor me and teach me. And then she also had someone else she was mentoring and teaching, who she said, you two need to critique for each other. Her name is Joanne Rock. We are still critique partners 2 decades later, 2 decades and dozens of published novels later. We're both still around. And that's, the beauty of that moment of just sitting on that floor and finding, I don't even want to think if I hadn't sat on that floor and found that. I like to think the universe would have found it for me anyway. But
is it when you asked what made you write it, I really wanted to say was it unmedicated ADHD hyperfixation? Probably.
Could be. Yeah, I'm one of those later in life diagnosed with ADHD.
Mhm.
I didn't get diagnosed till about a decade later, and changed my world, man. But it helped me to then even harness even more those tendencies. Um, but I'm also one of the first to say that, like, I'm thankful for my ADHD. Very, very thankful for it because
And that wasn't a hate on your
no, I
hyperfixation.
know. I absolutely know that. I'm aware. I'm aware. But the ability for me, like, when they make the joke of, oh, squirrel, or, or, oh, look, there's a chalkboard over there. But that also when I'm writing a
Right. Yeah.
story, I can see so many different paths and ways that it can go, and unexpected paths and ways. And sometimes I just have to figure out how to motivate it over there.
Mm.
That to me, that's a great gift to the creative process. And I would say too, it's one that Haley has in a different form. Haley was diagnosed with dyslexia and dysgraphia in the second grade, and the way that she views words in a different fashion, because yes, she sees them differently, her brain processes them differently, and she can craft them into a whole different look than say I would, or that any of us would think of, but that works and is so awesome. The example I like to use is she wrote a poem when she was young that she said, and I took this as a compliment. I thought it was sweet. It was talk, talk, talk. My mom likes to talk like the tick tock of a clock. Talk and talk to her sounded the same. And it was this precious, cute poem that was spot on.
Hmm.
Um, I really wanted to flippantly say when you said, how did you write so many in such a short time? I like to say, well, like nobody told me to stop.
Yeah.
I just kept going.
What made you decide to
Um,
write a book, Haley?
I think again, like some of the reasons that my mom started were similar to mine, or the reason she didn't start kind of is that like I was surrounded by very successful authors and romance authors and that and it almost was like I remember when I kind of first started to have the idea like I wanted to write, and I was talking to my best friend and I was like, but I can't do it like that. I can't write that many books. I can't like I won't be that. And she was like, you don't need to be that. You can just write your own books and how many or as few as you want. And so I think it was very much finding my own being. It happened in my early 30s, and I think a maturity that happened that I realized that I could do something that was similar, um, but have autonomy over, and it was mine and have my own voice. Um, and I think again, like the just maturity that happens in your early 20s of finding your own way in the world, and so that I think that that kind of delayed my interest in writing because I just really was like, well, no, I'm not going to do that's my mom's thing. And then I kind of started to have these characters talk to
Hmm.
me. And then I think also a part of it was there was definitely doubt that I could do it well, just because of like my learning disability. And I think I was teaching at the time, and I think that I being in the classroom and telling kids that they can do anything that they set their minds to, and that their disabilities, their whatever things they struggle with are not reasons or to stop. Kind of like, well, if I tell them to chase their dreams, then why am I ignoring
Hmm.
mine? And that kind of also, kind of kicked my butt into gear.
Right.
And um, so yeah, that's kind of just had a character, and then felt mature enough and confident enough in myself to try. And that's why I started.
On sort of a side note, I don't, some folks may not know this, but Debbie Macomber, the great Debbie Macomber, who's had an immensely successful romance writing career, has dyslexia. And
Hmm.
I saw her in one of the first
Oh.
conferences I went to. She was the guest speaker, and she told that. I was right kind of in that same time frame with Haley's journey with dyslexia, and it just it gave me all the more joy and hope to think about Haley's future, and that with what early intervention and with what encouragement can do to make great things happen.
So once you wrote your 100,000 novel, Catherine, then what did you do with it?
Immediately started the next book because I am I'm a very determined and stubborn person, and so I was I was just going to keep, no matter how many books it took, I was going to make this happen. And it was also in that writer group, saw that a lot of us had different kinds of journeys. Some folks, yes, would massage one book over and over and over again for a year, 2 years, 3 years, based on either critique group feedback or contest circuit feedback, whatever. And then some others would just, okay, I learned from this and now I'm going to go write another one. And that was the path that I decided to take. That first book had gotten me the interest of an agent who then wanted to see, wasn't going to sign on that book, but wanted to see the second book. Luckily, I had already written that second book by the time I heard back. And so I was able to show, all right, one of my strengths is that I do write fast and I write a, pretty smooth um, draft, first off. And then of course I go through and do my revisions again and again and again. But I was able to send her that one.
Mm-hmm.
She did sign me based on that one. I did never sell that. I never sold that one. But while she was out marketing that one, I then had finished another, which then got the interest of an editor. That one didn't sell right away. It ended up being my fifth book that sold, and I later went back and sold the third and fourth. But I was never waiting to hear beyond just like whatever little bit of, yes, you want to know what feedback, but I was not just sitting down saying, okay, I'm going to take 6 months off and then we'll see what everybody says and then I'll write another one. No, I was already
Right.
diving straight right into the next one. And I do think that in the right lane and time. Now, granted, remember, I was doing this 20 plus years ago, and it was a different, it was a different writing world then. But I think
Mm-hmm.
in my case, that helped get the interest. I also, back then, there were a lot of writing contests that were really strong and reputable and that had editors and agents that were final round judges. And so I did finally so I got the book that
Mm-hmm.
sold was, I had 3 editors in 1 week asked to see the full based on that contest entry. And it sold off of that. Now, the story I do like to tell about writer voice is I had a friend that we were telling almost exactly the same sorts of stories. They were geared for Harlequin, they were suspense, and we were doing the contest circuit together. We would always final together. If editors, whatever editor was looking at it, if they placed hers first, mine was third. If mine was first, hers was third. And we really, it kind of helped us to see that it's
Oh,
that a
funny.
no doesn't necessarily mean that the book is awful or that uh, it it just means that different editors have different preferences, the same way that readers have different preferences, and so that it's to really kind of
Mm-hmm.
track who, as you're making your wish list for what editors to send to, who are their authors, what books are they drawn to publishing, and that can kind of help you still tell your story the way you want to tell it, but helping it to land in the right place.
Yeah. So you mentioned that you write a pretty smooth first draft. Do you plot
Heavily,
your book before
heavily,
you write it?
heavily, yes. Yes. Well, heavily, but I'm a big fan of Christopher Vogler's The Writer's Journey, which is an adaptation of Joseph Campbell's The Hero with a Thousand Faces. And that the premise of it is storytelling is as old as time, all the way back to caveman campfires. They were telling stories and writing them on walls, and that there are certain points within a story that are going to be there no matter whether it's a mystery or a romance or, whatever it's going to be. And that it's how to kind of hit those points. So, and those points make your characters grow, which is what then makes the journey worth the while when you get to the
Mm-hmm.
end. And you can see it in movies. Um, it's fascinating for me to watch, but it got me through a lot of children's Disney movies. I would I would think through the 12 plot points as I sat there with my kids and Rugrats 17 or whatever. But at any rate,
Mm-hmm.
but the scenes themselves for me, I don't necessarily have all those individual scenes plotted out. That's where the character really starts to talk to me, into the quirkiness and the dialogue, and that kind of brings it alive. Sometimes it will take a path off, but I pretty much know start, middle, end where we're going.
Yeah. So when it takes a path off, do you then replot the rest of the points you have left to hit, or do you just keep
It depends
going
on
with
if it
those points in
fits.
mind?
I have the book I'm working on right now. I'm writing my next women's fiction novel, which we're loosely calling The Sweet Tea Odyssey. And the I realized that things were wrapping up
Cute.
too fast. And I couldn't figure out why. And then I realized there needed to be
Mm.
an extra day, like, and I knew which event needed to happen, and so I had to push some things off and then insert some stuff there, which also then meant I had to layer some other things earlier on. So it didn't so much take me off my big path, but
Mhm.
it certainly shifted the trajectory of the midpoint a little bit.
Mhm. And what about you, Haley? Do you plot
Um,
or do you
I'm a
pants?
pantser, for sure. I think that, um, I the way that I learn, I think, like, when I decided I wanted to kinda write, I read, like, 300 romance novels in a year, and just, like, that was the 100,000 word hyperfixation. That was my 100,000 word hyperfixation. I just read 300 books. And it almost I just needed to, like, feel when they happened, the plot points, rather than read about them in a, like, a structured kind of way. And I do think that's just the different learning styles and what made sense for my brain. So, and that's kind of how I write as well, is when I I obviously I have ideas, but I'm very character driven, and so the characters really drive the plot. And I kind of know, like, again, why they're not, what's going to happen in the end, where the setting is, kind of that stuff. But I very much let the story uh like feel where the beats are supposed to happen, and I might not have the technical names for them, uh but
Mhm.
I think that that's just a difference in learning, as I kind of feel when they're supposed to happen. And now that I'm working on my third book, I am kind of like almost going backwards, and now that I know it, kind of going and trying to see what it actually looks like in, like, a structured form, like what what it does look like if you actually plot, and what the plot points are called and everything like that. But um I think that I lose some of the, for me, I have a hard time being in the story if I get it written down too much. It's almost like it kind of kills my creative spark a little bit, and I don't enjoy writing it as much.
I would also say an interesting the way that the Christopher
Yeah.
for folks that don't know, so Christopher Vogler's 12 plot points, which come off of the Joseph Campbell book, it actually started, he was working for Disney and they asked him to take the Joseph Campbell model and develop it into, like, it was in essence just a flyer at that point, that as a way to study movies that were out and if they weren't hitting the mark, why. And so he then later, of course, developed this into the longer book. But I find it
Mhm.
fascinating to, like she was saying, those it internalized through reading a lot of books. And yes, I would say those 12 points have been internalized for me a good bit just from having done this a number of times. But if I am struggling, like I was struggling with the current book, to figure out why it wasn't working, it was helpful to go back to that and say, okay, it's not working because I missed this point right here. The story isn't resonating in that deep core way that
Mhm.
that storytelling is innate to all of us since the beginning of time, because I had skipped this one point. And that helped me to then refocus and go, okay, well, I just need this, this, and this. And so it was a great tool that way.
Mhm. Yeah. I have noticed that I also enjoy Disney movies more if I'm analyzing the story. We just watched Inside Out 2 for the billionth time, which is a delightful film, and one of the better ones we watched. But on the fifth time, you're like, okay, I'm just gonna watch to analyze the story. Otherwise, you got
So
nothing.
funny.
But it's a good one, and it definitely does hit like those beats. You can see it. They're very
Yeah.
animated. Dun, dun, about it. So, do you read each other's work?
Yes. So,
Wait, I do want to tell a story though. So when because I think I had, like, no interest in, I
yeah.
wouldn't say, like, there was never like a talk of me writing before I decided to write. It just kind of was, I had the characters in my head, and then one day I was like, I think I'm going to write a book. And which feels just so like the audacity of that statement. But when I right, I'm just going to do
Isn't
it.
it
So
great?
when I told her that I was going to write it, right, going to write a book, she was
I love
like,
it.
she said something along the lines of, like, well, you've been, like, entertaining our family with your stories for years. Like, maybe it's time you entertain a larger audience. Like, all these just, like, wonderfully beautiful things that, like, encouraged me. And then she was like, when you're done, I'll read it, but I want you to finish it first, and I'll read it when you're done. So then I finished it. and she read it, and then she called me and she was like, "Oh, thank God this doesn't suck." And I and I just remember I was like, "Where was the nice
Yeah.
person before?" And she was like, "Well, that was mom. Mom is going to encourage you." But like the author in me was ready to tell you like maybe this isn't what you should do if it wasn't working. And so yes, we have read for each other.
Yeah.
Um and and I have learned so much from her reading for me, and I'm thankful now that I can read in a way that's because I've read for her before in the past, like looking for typos, but um now I feel like I'm able to actually add helpful feedback.
Very much.
And so
Very
that's
much.
been a nice just like a nice bonus that has come. It feels special to connect on that level and to read each other's work.
And I would like to see Haley continue to grow and feel confident in sharing insights with me because she's spot on when she does. And I have enough confidence in my own voice that if she wasn't spot on with a comment, that's not going to be the whole entirety of Haley to me. It's just be like, okay, well, that one comment, but the bulk of what she has to say is
Yeah.
is spot on. And she's an intuitive reader, and even knowing that our voices are very different. And I would think too that that's another thing that when you're looking at people to read for you and critique partners is making sure that you're very confident in your own voice, because knowing what things work, and it doesn't necessarily mean that that person is
Hmm.
wrong or bad, but what works for your story, and does that person respect your voice and love your voice. And I love Haley's voice. She writes a very different story than I write. I do read some books that are like her voice, but or her types of stories, but I love and respect her voice. And so it's a joy to get to kind of be a part of, what I'm talking about, or just sharing like some little technical points here or there. But man, so my critique partner also read for her, and we're both
Yeah.
like, "Wow, she got a voice." I mean, a voice. That's the magic, man. Is that voice. You cannot I could read something totally blindly and I would know if it was Haley's work. It's just really, really special.
Is it hard to give each other feedback? Like maybe when it's not like the most complimentary feedback? Like sometimes you have to give hard feedback as a reader or a critique partner. But then at the end of the day, you still have to be like mother and
You
daughter.
can feel free to go
So
for it if
is
you
that
want.
hard?
So, I mean, I think now that it's not, I think that the confidence that comes with, uh, I mean, to be fair, I'm the one getting the hard feedback. That's me getting the that's me.
Yeah.
Um, but I think that now, like 3 books in, I feel very I'm thankful. Like I look at feedback as a gift, and being able to see feedback, and even if I don't think that that's the answer, like looking at the why behind it and finding an answer that works for my voice is something that I feel like I've become comfortable with. Um but the when she read my first book, um, I would say it was almost like I was in like a mentorship program where she was, I'm willing to help you with this, but these are things that need to be, and so teaching me, and I would say sometimes I would get to a page and I would close the computer, because there would be so many comments, and then I would just go take a walk. And then I would come back and feel okay
Hmm.
about moving forward with the feedback. But it was never, I always say it was never hard. It was more like I was frustrated that I needed so much help that I didn't figure that out on my own. And so that's where that like and I wasn't upset. It was just like overwhelming. So I would just close my computer and go take a walk, and then I would be fine when I would come back.
And I would say two things. First off, I would not, and I don't mean this in a, what I would not give that kind of time if I did not feel like the work itself had promise and the ability to be public, to reach publication, because I don't think that it wouldn't have been fair to Haley to have had her do the things that, again, were just my opinion that I thought, needed to be either tweaked or some different just insights to add or skills to pick up, that were just technical things. But why would I have my child put in, so when you're talking about just the mother-daughter relationship beyond just the critiquing relationship, why would I have her work that hard and put in that much work
Mm.
for something that I didn't feel was going to succeed. That is the antithesis of motherhood, you know. I wanted to
Yeah.
support her. Um, and I also felt like she was willing
Yeah.
to put in the work, you know, to do it. And then the third thing I would say is I am a firm believer, and we learn as much from the things we do right, as the things that we're not necessarily hitting right away. So I do try when I'm critiquing like that. Well, there might be a lot of comments on a page. Some of it is like, this is perfect. Here, this moment that is shining, or this plot point is shining, or this piece of dialogue is shining. Try to do, you know, look at doing something like this over here in this chapter, you know, perhaps. And I think it'll, you know, sparkle some of that fairy dust on there. So there's a lot,
Hmm.
you know, more that kind of weaves into that. And I also always say publishing is hard. Somebody's going to say something mean to you. I mean, like really, and you can either hear it on this end as you're writing your book, and then hopefully you get it polished to the point that like, okay, it's an age, or you can wait and then the agent says it to you, or you can, the editor's going to say, or the reader is going to say it and throw your book in the trash. So which do you prefer? I prefer to get as much as I can from my critique partner. And then, okay, yes, if my
Hmm.
agent has something to say, bring it on. Tell me all of it. I want to know. Editor, same thing. You know, now we can discuss points that we may or may not agree on, but bottom line, we're all doing our jobs.
Yeah.
Fair?
Fair.
Yeah. I do think it's important to have the positives pointed out, which is kind of a style preference, it seems, because some people just have time,
Mhm.
just point out what needs fixing according to you,
It's
um,
hard.
which is
Well,
hard
so
for
she
me.
my mom and her critique partner both,
Yeah.
because they've critiqued for each other for so long, there's some things that they do that are very similar, and they give smiley faces. And when they really like something, at the end of a sentence, they'll just put a smiley face on. And so when I would get a particularly like heavy note chapter that was just again, and it was all right, I would go through and I would go find my smiley faces. And that's like I would just give myself those like little hits of dopamine and read the nice,
Hmm.
you know, the uplifting things before I got to the part that I needed to put in the work on. And so I do think you got to say nice things. And I even do it when I read for her too.
Yeah.
Like I really like this. You know, and she doesn't need it.
Oh, well,
But
but we all like to know what is working. You know, what is working, what is resonating. Those, because we do learn as
Yeah.
much from that, so we can then replicate those kinds of moments that we're creating. But again, I would say Haley had so much more going for her in that first book. I've read a lot of people, you know, I've mentored a number of people over the years, and she had so much going for her in that first book. That was, I mean, it was a book. It was a story. It was as good as many things you see out there, you know, already published. It was really a joy to get to be a part of that process, because again, if I hadn't believed in it, I would have figured out a way to tell her, because I have that much respect and love for her that I wouldn't be blowing smoke. And so
Yeah.
when looking for a critique partner, anybody who's watching this, when you're looking for a critique partner, there are many people out there who are great critique partners, who are smart people, who are smart writers. But that partnership goes beyond that. And it's finding somebody who does respect your voice, who does appreciate your voice, and is going to love, respect, and appreciate your work and treat it with professional respect. And if what they're saying really isn't hitting well, then don't be afraid to say, thank you so much for your time, and leave it at that. And then go find someone and try the next one. I was
Hmm.
very lucky. My first critique partner is my critique partner. My critique partner, though, she went through about 4 different people before we landed together. And oh, the horror stories she has to tell. And they weren't bad people. It
Yeah.
just bad fit, in the same way that sometimes you can have an amazing, you know, agent but the agent and author have to be the right fit. Editor and author have to be the right fit. And but I will say,
Hmm.
if you're hearing the same thing again and again and again, then yes, you need to look a little bit deeper. If you're hearing that same piece of criticism or critiquing, I hate the word criticism, but critiquing from more than one person, then it's time to take a look.
I've definitely had some tea partners that were not the right fit, just like didn't really read the genre or like the genre I was writing, or maybe it was my voice. I don't know. I've definitely had some where I was like, I
this
probably don't
isn't
even
helpful.
need
Yeah,
to
this
read all
isn't
the comments
helpful.
on this because
Well, and I
it's
think
not
too,
going
like
to
you
be good.
mentioned, like having that positive
It's not gonna be
feedback.
good.
And I think again, like knowing what you need to be a successful writer, and some people need more kind words than others, or more uplifting than others, and that's not right or wrong. And so I think that just goes back into like knowing what you need as a writer, and hopefully finding someone who can elevate your book and give you those things to keep going, because it is hard.
Yeah. I think it is really important too to know what's working. I had Erin Rose on the podcast a while ago now. Their book Sparring Partner
They're
is
Harlequin.
going to come out soon, but their publisher has a word count. Their publisher
Ooh.
has a word count limit. And so their book was picked up, but then they had to cut 10,000 words from the book after it was written and after it was picked up. So I always think like if they didn't have people that had told them or each other to tell them what's working, like they might have cut something that they would have been a
Yeah.
really favorite moment for somebody. But if you know it's working, then you
Yeah, those
know
are things
that
you
shouldn't
should
be
keep.
part of the 10. Have both of you always known you wanted to go traditional publishing?
Well, keep in mind when I started, that's all there was, really, for the most part. The whole um, ebook
Yeah.
was really, gosh, I'd have to look at exactly when. I remember the early rumblings of it, but so for me, that was so.
Yeah. And I think for me, the reasons that I am pursuing traditional path are definitely related to like my learning disabilities. I don't know that my ADHD would allow me to give myself deadlines, give myself like I don't know that I could be my own boss in that. In the sense, and all of the things that
Mm-hmm.
fall on you when you go to down a self-publishing path. And I think that like I am I I'm so in awe of people who do that, and who do all of the things, and they are in charge of every aspect of their writing and
Mhm.
book. I think that's amazing. I just don't know that my brain has the ability to make myself do those things, even medicated, if I'm being honest.
Yeah. Well, on top of like other things like your job and your
Yeah,
child and
I just
all the things.
I think that it's the path that makes sense for me, and my limitations, and my just the energy I have to give, and the time that I have to give. It's just a path that makes sense for me.
That makes sense. Yeah. Your book that's coming out though, you have 2 books coming out.
Too, yes, this is um, my Harlequin special edition. I've written for Harlequin since my very first book, over 2 decades ago. I'm excited to still they've Harlequin's been very good to me. And then here is my women's fiction with Lake Union. And
That's
it's
awesome.
interesting because both books tackle the subject of women in abusive relationships, and they tackle it somewhat from two different kinds of perspectives when you're looking at that romance world and the women's fiction world. But within both worlds, both women need to find their own freedom and autonomy within themselves before they move forward with what that happily ever after is going to look like, whether that's about their friends, whether it's about a relationship, whether it's about the business they're building. But so it was really interesting to see, because I didn't initially plan that it would land this way when I was telling the stories. It's just the different publication schedules. That's how it worked out.
Mhm.
So it's been really fun to think through those.
Yeah, and the romance is
Yes.
called Charming the Cowboy, and the women's fiction is
Yes.
called
Thank you.
Lightning in a Mason Jar. Did you write them at the same time?
I, it I tend to not write two books at the same time, but I may have written like the proposal, like, say the synopsis for one, and then I go write this one, and then I'll go write this, so that there's always like at any given time, like right now, I've got 4 different books in the works right now in various stages of production. So 4, no, 5, because there's one that's finished, but that's in
That
production.
makes my
So
brain
there's
hurt.
5, like, 5 books that have various amounts. So my brain is in each one, but I tend to, when it's time to actually sit down and write that book, I tend to blast pretty much straight through. And then I may, yes, be doing the revision stages will come as I'm then blasting through that first draft on another one.
Fascinating.
Said fascinating.
Is it hard to keep the story straight? Because sometimes I have tried in the past to write 2 books at the same time. because I am a genre hopper and I write romance and I write mystery and I have a
And you're also a
lot of
fast drafter
ideas
too.
all of the time, but not very much time.
Yeah.
I'm pretty fast. Though one summer, because I also work at a elementary school, one summer I was like, well, I can write 2 books. I'll write one in the morning and then I'll write one in the afternoon when we have like afternoon snack because I have a daughter too, and it'll be fine. That's totally fine. It was not like my brain turned to mush. Like the stories, I was able to keep the stories straight, but I don't feel like either one was as strong as it could be because I felt like I was cheating on it with this other book. So, like, how do you keep all, I guess, is it because you really focus on one book at a time and the other ones are in kind of like lesser
Right. So like
brain
I've got
devoted
one
stages?
that's finished and out. We've done everything for all I need to look at is, well, not counting these two, but we're not. So I guess you could say it's 7 that aren't out, but no,
Right.
but but no,
It's
not counting the
7.
July books. So I have one that's coming out in December. So that's more. I'm thinking the shows too.
Not counting
But
the
no,
2 books
the December
coming.
one, I would be thinking more in terms of promotional blurbs and keeping that story in my mind enough to just as far as share about the story. If I were to talk with you about them, and it's actually the sister of the Charming the Cowboy story,
Right.
and then the next one would be one
Fun.
that I'm in the process of writing. I'm almost done with it. And then I have the other 3 are I've got a full synopsis for one and then blurbs for the other 2. And then I'm also taking notes for other women's fiction ideas along the way, but those aren't formalized. It's more just a note file. And so then, when the women's fiction goes in, then I'll shift to just taking one of those to a longer level and so forth. So the only thing that really overlaps with all of it is just the promotional parts. And I will say sometimes that does get like, who are those people again? I kicked them out of my brain 6 months ago. But, yeah, but
I had to make
but
room for somebody else.
but other than that, it is pretty much the focus is on one book, as far as that core, to me, that core storytelling, or if I'm doing the core synopsis writing, that has to be all I focus on. Like, if I'm going to write a synopsis, I have to
Mhm.
stop the book I'm working on and do it. I couldn't do that, like write one story in the morning and one in the afternoon, or that my brain doesn't work that way. And that again, that goes back to we all have
It didn't
different.
work for Nicole
Yeah.
either.
We all have different process, a different process, and we got to respect, but your process is your process and go with it if it's working.
That's a lot of books. So, what is your process then? Do you have a routine that you follow to draft the books?
I have
Do you light a candle? Are there spells?
I do have a process of sorts. I set like I know that the start of a book is very hard for me. Like, it takes me a long time to write. About the first third of a book is really because I'm very much getting to know everybody. The rest of it's like just falling off a log. Then it's just kind of like gathering all the pieces up and here we go. So I do know that part of myself from having done this a while. And so then I set weekly page counts or word counts. It can go either way. Right now I'm kind of on like number of words I have to do. And so if by Friday I'm done with my word count, then I get the weekend off. If I am not done with the word count, then I have to catch up on Saturday and Sunday in order to make sure that I hit that deadline. Because if I don't hit that deadline, I'm just, it's just kicking that, it's making everything miserable down the road. And I respect the editors and their deadlines too much to not get something in when I say I'm going to get it in. But as far as a process, it's I do have writing times that work better for me. Morning is not one of them. I'm not a morning person, so I try to do things in the morning, like I'll do social media then, or I'll put together some, Canva um,
Graphics.
graphics, to use during that time. I may proofread something during that time
Mhm.
if I have to, but core writing needs to kind of either be in the early part of the afternoon or just in the dark when everything is quiet.
At
And
like 2 a.m. She's
Oh, yes, very much. My husband and
Oh
I
yeah.
have very opposite schedules. He gets his very quiet mornings. He feeds the dogs, all that. Then no, it's not unusual for me to stay up till 2 or 3 in the morning. And the kids are all grown now. So if I sleep late, I sleep late. And then I
Yeah.
hit that next, core batch.
There you go.
It's not unusual to get a text that will have been sent at 2:30 in the morning. From my I wake up for work 2:30 a.m. Someone was writing last night.
But I think it's important to I do write fast, but
Yeah.
someone gave me a piece of advice early on as I was just so chasing publications so hard, and my children were little and I was so all encompassed. And she said, "Don't forget to experience your life as you're seeking to write about other lives." And that has really stuck with me. And then to even another degree, that you have to replenish the well. And so by going out and experiencing the world, and yeah, even if it's as simple as
Mhm.
taking a walk around the block or going and sitting with your kids at the pool, or you just have to have those brain spaces and art and the way that the art of the world that we live in refills us back up. But yeah, it could be that yes, I just sit and have a Diet Coke and smell the air, the diffuser, pumping peppermint into the air or something, or going to a movie or going out to eat, or whatever the finances allow at that point. But or being with my family and not letting them, I still talk about mom guilt. Haley and I talk a lot about mom guilt. I can still remember her junior prom, and life was so crazy, and I can just remember crying because I'm like even like, trying to be everything. And she's like, "Mom, are you excited?" And I'm like, "Yes, I'm excited." But I was so frantic at the same time that I just don't want to be in that space, that I lose the joy of the moments, because no success
Mhm.
is worth that. And ultimately it will steal the sparkle from your
Yeah.
stories if you don't protect your life. Is that it?
What about you, Haley? Do you have a routine or a process that you follow when you draft?
I mean, I I think just based on kind of where I am in my life and um my job and being a single mom, and it just the I write when I can. And sometimes I'm better about getting up early and writing. Sometimes, and I think that also too, just because I'm querying and I'm not on any kind of real deadline. That sometimes that's nice, sometimes that's harder, and so sometimes I'm not as disciplined and don't have a routine. But I think that having critique partners in your life who are writing as well, and the exchanging of work helps me uh stay focused and continue to write, because I do think that it's like, it's a muscle that you need to work. But like as far as like routines, it's kind of what is working for me in that moment. Mornings, evenings, lunchtime at work, that kind of thing, is really I just finding pockets of time,
Mm.
Mhm.
and wherever that works. I also have a couple writing groups that I will do accountability with online, and that also helps just make me sit down and write for longer periods. And it also kind of fills my will, because then I talk to other writers, and
Yeah.
that's fun and nice. So pockets of time, that's when I write.
I mean, and that was my earlier
Yeah.
my earlier way of doing it back when the kids were all still at home.
Yeah.
And it wasn't unusual to be sitting at like a track meet or a basketball game or music lessons and have, printed out pages, that because back then we didn't have, the laptop computer weighed as much as a sewing machine. But that, I'd be
Mhm.
scribbling on pages, or, or whatnot. And
Yeah.
and I had even had my tasks prioritized by like what was something I could do in a carpool line versus what I could do, um, you know, while we were all sitting around watching TV, versus what I had to have utter and complete quiet for, so that those pockets of time could be best utilized.
Mhm.
And this is Nicole, because I know you have a very structured writing routine, and it works for you. But
I
I love
do.
hearing about it.
But I'm also a natural
Yeah.
early riser. Yeah, I'm a natural early riser. So I went through a brief moment from late teens to very early 20s where I could sleep in. But before that and after that, it's very early. I just wake up, and it doesn't matter how late I stay up, I wake up. So it used to be 6. I would wake up at 6 every morning, and that's like pretty reasonable. And then around the time I turned 30, it turned into 5. Um, and I worked as a barista for a while, and that made it even earlier. And then my daughter was born, and then she was up every morning at 4 in the morning. So when I started writing, I just did it on my phone, like while breastfeeding or while pumping, because it made me sane. Because I was like, oh, want to be up
I
right
am
now
so
too.
happy that it's 4
This is
a.m.
also something I want to do. I'm so glad we're on the same page right now. This is great. You're hanging out on your tummy. I'm writing a book. This is beautiful. But she stayed at 4 a.m., wake up for a long time. Just recently, she has started sleeping in until like 5:36, which is great. But I still wake up at 4.
Mothers around the world, we all understand.
So it gives me time in the morning, like to myself. And I feel like, oh, I got to do something that I chose to do um that day. And it like sets the tone of my day, like uh in a good place. I also ruminate. I have a lot of anxiety. And so if I start the day in my story, when I ruminate about the story and not about like, oh, should I get that mole checked? Or like, is she breathing too heavy? Or like, just like
Medical
medical
anxiety.
anything. Oh
Yeah.
yeah, for sure. Very high. But like for me it works well, but I know it's not for everybody. Also, I would love to do the writing accountability groups. Like, I really want to go to Helly's, but it's also like if she would do it at
Well, maybe
5
you
in the
should start
morning, I'm
that,
in.
Nicole. Maybe you should
There's
start
not
a 5
many
a.m.
at
one.
5 in the morning.
Yeah.
Yeah, maybe I should. Yes, but we all have to whisper so we
That's
don't wake anybody up.
low lights,
That would be the
quiet
trick.
whispers, quiet words, and just the tap of the keyboard. That's all we need.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Coffee. Yes.
Coffee. Yep. Yes.
I
Yes,
have a
and that
friend
will
who
be
that was the way
perfect.
that she did it. Her name is Winnie Griggs. She writes inspirational historicals, and and we were all kind of ran in that same mentoring group back in the early days. And she had 4 children. Her husband was a farmer. She was a big executive at a power company, and she, oh my goodness, she would get up an hour before the kids and wrote on her lunch break and did it and it worked. She was able to make that happen. But I just remember being so in awe because I thought, oh, I would be a zombie and a not nice zombie. I mean, are there nice zombies though?
I don't.
See, if I stayed until 2 in the morning, I would be a zombie. It's just different strokes for
Absolutely.
different folks, I guess. Yeah. You mentioned, Haley, that you're querying, and I have also found querying and drafting don't work very well together because I feel like there's so much energy that's put into querying, even when you've sent the queries out and they are just hanging in the ether. Like, I still feel like for me, energy is like being put there that it's harder for me to like get into another story.
I think
Do you
I'm.
find the same to be true?
Yes. As I just hopped to a different story in the last like week because I was drafting something and I was excited about what I was drafting, but I just could not. So I don't know. It was just some kind of mental block, and so I've started drafting something else. But no, I think that you just talking about the ruminating and the anxiety. It is hard. It is hard to disconnect, but I've tried to set just like realistic expectations and I don't need to hit a crazy word count. Writing is a muscle and I'm trying to just work it. And so that's kind of where I am. And
Yeah.
the book I'm querying could go somewhere or it could die in the query trenches. And so I'm trying to just write. I'm just trying to write. And that I think
Hmm.
what it looked like when I was writing to get ready to query was probably I was doing it faster, better, more disciplined, whatever. And so I've tried to just kind of let go of that and just write. Just write. That's what I'm trying to do. And I have stories and I think ones that would
Yeah.
be probably easier, better to query if I have to do it again, but I just just as long as I'm writing, I feel okay. Um, not losing myself in the stresses of it.
And my heart aches for you all that are starting
Yeah.
this journey now, because there is so much information out there with Query Tracker and such. Like, for us back in the day, man, we printed out the pages, and then, I would turn
Yeah.
all 400 pages to make sure there were no extra pieces of white paper in there, put it in the envelope and sent it out. And I knew I wasn't going to hear anything for 3 months to 18 months, and it was just gone. And so that there was a certain frustration with
Yeah.
that, but also there was nothing I could do. There was no information to access. So, to have that, like, it would just be very anxiety inducing to me to see
Okay.
all of that, the Query Tracker data and such. That it's helpful on the one hand, but also, I think yes, it could be very, very stifling.
It's not. I've decided resolutely
It's
it
not.
is not
I mean,
helpful to have all that information. And I'll tell you why. Because either they're going to request it or they're not. And whether you're in the maybe pile with all the little like red lines around you or not, unless
it
you're that
doesn't.
green smiley face line, it doesn't matter
Yeah.
at all. It just adds to it. And I am usually much like I can usually be pretty good about not checking it because I'm like, it doesn't matter. It doesn't. But then I'm like, oh, but I
Oh,
could just look. Even though it doesn't
it is
matter.
very hard.
It's so
So
hard.
but yes, I just writing and remembering why I started, why I'm doing this in the first place, just writing. And some days are, as you said, some days are great. I don't need to look. And then some days I'm like taking screenshots and like going back and referencing, and say, we do what we can. We try to not lose our minds.
Yeah. Yeah. Try to do our best. Well, thank you both so much for being here. Is there anything else that both of you, either of you, would like to share?
July 1st. They both come out.
July 1st for both of them, Lightning in a Mason Jar and Charming the Cowboy,
Yes.
which is amazing. I love that they're both coming on the same day. Same, and that you didn't count them towards the 5
That you-
in the works.
But
7
I
books.
guess I would just say thank you to you and thank you to Haley. And it's been really exciting through Haley to kind of get to access, the bring back the excitement of those, early days of my critique partner and I, Joanne, have talked about this a lot. And just those early days when we think back to, when we were sitting at the playground, with our kids playing and talking about just all those different analyzing, we're doing this and doing that, and what was going to work and what wasn't going to work. And just being so thankful that there are more generations of writers coming up, because it is through books that we learn to empathize with other people. It is through books that our soul flourishes. And I'm just so thankful
Mhm.
for folks like y'all. And thank you for letting me peek in.
Thank you for being here, Mom.
I do write fast, but someone gave me a piece of advice early on, as I was just so chasing publications so hard. And my children were little and I was so all encompassed. And she said, don't forget to experience your life as you're seeking to write about other lives. And that has really stuck with me. And then to even another degree, that you have to replenish the well. And so by going out and experiencing the world, and yeah, even if it's as simple as taking a walk around the block or going and sitting with your kids at the pool, or you just have to have those brain spaces, and the way that the art of the world that we live in refills us back up.